As Oregon's economic expansion pushes into its ninth year, state economists and lawmakers are increasingly focused on when the next recession might hit. "That's really what we're obsessing over now," state economist Mark McMullen told lawmakers during a presentation this week. "There's starting to be a lot of discussion out there about what could go wrong. But economists and lawmakers also say Oregon is better positioned to weather a moderate economic downturn than it was in the past, thanks to changes lawmakers and voters approved over the last 2 decades. By next summer, the state's Office of Economic Analysis forecasts Oregon will have enough financial reserves built up to cover 11% of the general fund budget. That's not enough to get the state through the type of deep recession that occurred during the 2008-09 financial crisis, but it could stave off deep budget cuts during a moderate downturn, such as the 2001 recession," McMullen said. Economists predict total reserves will reach $2.3 billion by next summer. The current 2-year state budget is approximately $21 billion. "This is phenomenal," said Mark Hass, chair of the Senate Finance and Revenue Committee, said Wednesday. "This is what everybody wanted," Hass said. Good government organizations generally recommend that states keep enough money in reserve accounts to cover 10% of their general fund budgets. Nearly a decade of economic growth has allowed lawmakers to balance state budgets without dipping into the savings accounts, allowing automatic payments to build up the rainy day and education stability funds. Mandates for those payments were added to the state constitution and Oregon law more than a decade ago. The state has also started several budget cycles with several $100 million on hand. "This is the first time we've been in this position with reserves," Legislative Revenue Officer Chris Alanek said this week. "Deciding how much to set aside in reserves is always a balancing act," he said. If the state were to save enough to get through a severe recession, some people might question why Oregon was sitting on so much money instead of spending it on services. Voters signed off on the Education Stability Fund in 2002 and it receives a portion of state lottery revenues. Lawmakers can tap both funds during a downturn, subject to specific economic triggers and voting requirements. The state feeds the Rainy Day Fund, created by the legislature in 2007, by diverting a small amount from the general fund. Advocates for building Oregon's reserves have long pointed to the volatility that accompanies the state's reliance on income taxes. Adding to that instability is Oregon's unique kicker tax rebate law, which is triggered when tax revenues for a 2-year budget cycle come in more than 2% above economists' forecast from the start of the cycle. Earlier this week, economists announced for the first time in this budget that it's likely taxpayers will receive a rebate on their 2019 taxes. The possibility that Oregon could issue the third kicker in a row, combined with talk of when the next recession will start, has some lawmakers discussing ways to chip away at the kicker. Oregon taxpayers on track to receive $555 million kicker rebate. McMullen said it's particularly difficult for economists to avoid triggering a kicker on forecasts near the start of a downturn, if the slowdown is later than predicted. "That's when we give out these big kicker payments, is when we get this big year just at the end when things are about to turn down," McMullen said. Hillary Borrett H4 at Oregonian.com 503-294-4034 at Borrett.